Now, many of you will have seen the group of people living in tents on Parliament Square. It's been called Democracy Village. The new government says it aims to restore many of the civil liberties it says were taken away by Labour, and that would include powers to protest. But Mayor Boris Johnson has begun legal action to remove them. Andrew Cryan reports.
For the last 9 years, Parliament Square has been home to the peace campaigner Brian Hawe. But since the beginning of May, he's been joined by another completely separate protest called Democracy Village, a coalition of anti-war anarchists, environmentalists, some homeless people and some former soldiers.
Over the past 3 weeks since I've been here, it started with just 5 tents, and since then we've grown to this massive community. We're all standing for the same thing, and it's getting bigger and stronger.
The protesters have become very settled, with an electricity supply, toilets and even a piano. Might need a bit of tuning. Some say the camp is a bit of an eyesore. Others disagree.
Well, it's a public space. It's opposite Parliament. And if you close political discussion on Parliament Square, how long it'll be before they close it down in Parliament itself? So I think it's a symbol of our right to live as free citizens with our own opinions about the future.
At first glance, you might think the new government agreed. The coalition has pledged to review the laws governing protest around Parliament Square and restore the right to public protest. It's thought that this could mean the repeal of certain parts of something called the Serious Organised Crime and Policing Act, something Gordon Brown had also promised to do, but strangely never got round to. Now, SOCPA, as it's known, was introduced in 2005, and it banned people protesting within a kilometre of Parliament without giving the police prior notice and then giving you permission. Now, in the past, it's been taken fairly seriously. For example, there was a man who was done for reading out the names of the Iraq dead up by the cenotaph, and then later for protesting here in Parliament Square. He went to court, he was fined for both, he refused to pay, and he ended up in jail. What's interesting about Democracy Village is that despite not applying to the police as they should have under SOCPA, the Met have not arrested them for it. They've decided to use their discretion.
They've said they've learnt a lot from G20. We have police pop through most days. They're welcomed, chatted around, we try and liaise. Some people, you know, very friendly, some don't always cooperate with them, but basically it's been good discussion and liaison.
So with the Met either unable or unwilling to do anything about it, Boris Johnson has taken it upon himself to kick everybody out. The GLA technically controls Parliament Square, and so Boris is trying to remove everyone for, of all things, trespassing. But it's not just the newcomers that City Hall have targeted. Brian Hawe has also been served with an injunction that could put an end to his near-decade-long residency.
Well, he's going to have to prove his case in the court of law, isn't he? I've been here since June the 2nd, 2001. I haven't trespassed. I've occupied this land on behalf of the people. I have the right to be here. I'm not the first, by the way. There's some people called the Tolpuddle Martyrs, the Chartists, the suffragettes were here, the revolting peasants, they were here. And there was a bit more violence in those days, wasn't there?
5 minutes around the corner, the Mayor and his team were heading into a meeting with the new Transport Secretary.
There is a balance to be struck between people's legitimate right to protest, which I support. I support people's ability, their right to protest, completely. But there's a balance to be struck between that and desecrating, digging up, causing damage, criminal damage, to a World Heritage Site. And that's why we've been obliged to launch the proceedings that we have.
So while the new government may have plans to restore rights to peaceful protest without looking at the Mayor of London's powers to do people for trespassing on Parliament Square, it may yet still be possible for the likes of Brian Hawe and the Democracy Village to be removed.
Andrew Cryan there. Joining me here at City Hall now, Isabella Sankey, Director of Policy at Liberty, and Colin Barrow, who's the leader of Westminster Council. Brian Hawe, is he trespassing in your mind, Colin?
Well, he's on the public highway, and he's very carefully on the public highway. And Brian's a skilled operator. He's managed to find a way through all the various nest of laws that are around Parliament Square, and he's maintained his protest for a long time. I think a lot of people are beginning to say that enough is enough.
But is he trespassing now, do you think?
Enough after...
Do you say he's trespassing?
As far as I'm aware, he isn't, but that's a matter for the GLA and for the court process, because he is not actually on the grass. It's the grass that the GLA is campaigning.
How would you ever get him? His name was there on the you know, the court application for trespass.
Well, then that's a matter between the GLA and its lawyers and so on.
He's just found another little loophole to get out of.
Well, we don't know whether he's out of it yet because it's yet to come to court. The point is that this is a square that is for London. It's a square that is for Londoners, and it is a square where well, nobody minds protest. I mean, I've been a protester myself. For many years before all these guys were born, I was out campaigning on the streets. So, you know, nobody minds protest. But what people do mind is the position of a camp created almost on a permanent basis, certainly on an indefinite basis, in a place that's a World Heritage Site. You know, you have to say that goes a little bit beyond the rights of protest.
Isabella Sankey, enough's enough. I mean, what is the position going to be here legally?
Well, I think as long as you have wars being fought, you're going to have peace protesters. And it's interesting what we've heard just now, that, you know, it's gone too far. Protest is fine, but, you know, perhaps when it's other people protesting about things that you perhaps don't believe in, it's not so fine. The important thing is where we draw the red lines. This is, as Tony Benn said there in your package, this is at the very seat of our democracy. This is such an important place where people can come together and make their voices heard. You know, we don't just have elections every 4 or 5 years. It's important that our elected representatives can hear people's gripes, can see people, you know, campaigning about things that they care about.
How about we just allowed him and others to come back every morning and leave every evening, and then, you know, not scar or deface the place 24 hours, 24/7?
I don't think protest is something that you can manage. I don't think it's about managing people's ability to express their deeply held beliefs. As long as the protest is peaceful, which, as far as we can see, this one is, they should be allowed to gather and to do that.
But you see the Mayor and the GLA are trying to manage it and are going to try and manage this because they're going to go to law.
Well, look, there are quite rightly laws about criminal damage, and if people are defacing things...
What about trespass?
Well, trespass is an interesting one. From what I understand, the law that the Mayor is trying to invoke here is something that was also passed in 2005 as part of the SOCPA Act, which you talked about again in the package. Under this piece of legislation, the Secretary of State can designate areas pretty much on a whim without any real justification. And when that designation is made, then you can bring actions for trespass against people in that area.
So that could happen here. It looks like that's what they're doing. And you say without any reason whatsoever. Of course, there is a major reason. The reason Colin Barrow, presumably, and a lot of others will feel, they are permanently, you know, scarring, shall we say. They are a permanent presence on public land, heritage land, opposite the House of Commons.
Well, of course, Parliament is nicely a World Heritage Site, but it's also so much more than that. It's not a relic. It's not something that's historic. It's about our living democracy. Interestingly, I think this piece of legislation that the Mayor is trying to invoke is something that the coalition might be committed to scrapping. So there might be an interesting tension.
That is interesting. Did you know that, Colin Barrow, that this might not be dodgy legislation?
Well, there certainly is dodgy legislation applying to Parliament Square because it's not effective in providing the sort of square that I think we all rather wish we had, which is a perfectly good World Heritage Site where people can protest on it from time to time under rules set by the police and by the you know, the powers that be. That's what we want to see, and the legislation is pretty inadequate for that. I mean, the law of trespass, I mean, you actually, I believe, are a lawyer. I mean, the law of trespass goes back hundreds of years about the use of seizing of private land by other people.
Before, when you wanted to open the Mandela statue, the police went in. Are they likely to do that here?
I mean, the police may very well do that, but the police will only go in to secure the land if the Mayor is successful in getting a court order to get people off his land. So the police just back up the courts and the bailiffs and all those people who move these people on. The question, the political question is, it's a political question. This is not a legal one. The political question is, what sort of order do we want in Parliament Square?
Brilliant. Thanks so much to both of you for coming in.